on TLC Live, Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo announced her temporary leave from office after being checked into inpatient care for clinical depression. To explain what is clinical depression, we invited Dr. Sana Vauda, assistant professor of University of St. Thomas, and to analyze the political and economic impact of the current situation of the judge of the largest county in Texas, Dr. Daniel Perez Liston from the University of Houston will be with us. Welcome to TLC Live. As every Wednesday, I'm Andrea Gomez.
And I'm Orlando Sanchez.
You're smiling.
Hey, look, I'm on this side of the dirt, as they say. At my age, every day that you live is a good day, so that's why you smile.
Exactly. That's for sure.
Hay que sonreírse.
Hay que sonreír. Hay que sonreír. Well, we have our county judge, Harris County Judge, Lina Hidalgo, that apparently this is like the second time that this has happened.
Yes.
So, I don't know. I want to understand when a Harris County judge, get into this kind of situation, who's going to who's going to be in charge?
Well, as somebody that served in Harris County for 12 years as the county treasurer, obviously who is in charge is the legislative body of Harris County, which includes Lina Hidalgo as county judge and then 4 commissioners, precinct 1, 2, 3, and 4. Mm-hmm. So the real power in Harris County is really vested in the commissioners. Any political power is vested in the majority of the body, Andrea. So that means that of the 5, it takes 3 votes to get anything done, right? Mm-hmm. If she's absent, it still takes a majority of the court. So apparently they have agreed from tradition, I don't believe this is statute, but I'm sure the professor might be able to clear this up. The longest tenured member of the commissioner's court will fill that role in Harris County.
Yeah.
If it were the city of Houston, according to city charter, the mayor gets to pick a mayor pro tem, meaning Italian word, a temporary mayor, in the absence of the mayor, or let's say the mayor is incapacitated for health reasons, as Lina Hidalgo apparently is, then the mayor pro tem takes over the administration of the meetings, that is the city council meetings. So we're operating under sort of what I think is sort of a tradition in Harris County that the longest serving member of the Commissioner's Court, which is Precinct 1, Rodney Ellis, will fill in and chair the meetings. So things will go on as normal. The only real duty, everybody thinks that the President of the United States is the guy that takes care of everything. We've discussed, not really.
Yeah.
Right? It's the local government that takes care of stuff. Well, everybody thinks that Lina Hidalgo runs the county. She doesn't. In fact, that office has very limited powers. And among them, the biggest power, if you want to call it a power, but the biggest duty is to oversee emergency management. So when there's a hurricane, when there's a tornado, when there's flooding, she, along with other partners in the region, go to the Emergency Management Center, which is Transtar.
Yeah.
And they oversee the emergency, coordinate police response, fire response, high water rescues, ambulances, hospitals. They work with CenterPoint Energy. They coordinate all this. So that's really the power of the county judge.
Okay, if she is now having her own emergency, what will happen that now we are in the middle of the hurricane season? What will happen if we have an emergency in the county?
Well, first of all, while she is the titular head of emergency response, there are professionals in emergency management in Harris County. We have the fire marshal, we have law enforcement, we have, the constables, we have Harris Health, we have the medical directors. So there's plenty of professionals that will step up. Obviously during an emergency and during hurricanes, you've always seen either Harris County Judge Emmett or Lina Hidalgo at the podium explaining to the public what's going on.
Correct.
But
in this case?
in this case, it probably could be Rodney Ellis. It could be the director of emergency management. I don't know what they'll work out, but nothing different's going to happen. It's just the person at the podium in an emergency situation will be someone other than Lena.
So
Excuse me, Judge Hidalgo.
So let's get into the topic, depression. So that's why we invited today Dr. Sana Vauda. She is an assistant professor of the University of St. Thomas, and she is going to explain to us what it that means, the clinical depression. What is the symptoms, how to identify, what is the treatment, and how long it can take.
I can answer that.
Well, no, we invite her for that.
Well, I can tell you my definition.
Well,
it's after I leave here and hanging out with you for an hour. I'm depressed.
You will need. You will need. Yeah, you will need a. You will need.
Just kidding.
To take care of that.
But it is a serious issue. So
good morning, Professor. Good morning. Welcome to TLC. Tell us about this condition.
Sure, and thank you so much for having me here with you this morning as well. I think since the news broke a couple days ago, a lot of people have been wondering, what is clinical depression? Is that different than regular depression? And, how do I know if I have depression, or how do I know if someone else has depression? So it's a really good time to start talking about what depression is and what to look for and what we can kind of expect for the treatment as well. When you look at the bare bones of it, clinical depression is feelings of sadness, but it's not your usual feelings of sadness. These are feelings of sadness that are persisting for quite some time, and you may see some other symptoms accompanying that sadness. So those symptoms can look different for everybody. For some people, it may be, loss of appetite or an increased appetite. For some people, it may be weight gain, weight loss. Lack of sleep. One of the most common symptoms is loss of interest or desire in things that used to be fun or exciting. Sometimes it can be social isolation, low energy levels, difficulty concentrating. So there really are several different symptoms, and a combination of these symptoms that go on for over 2 weeks or an extended period of time can be considered clinical depression.
Professor, do folks generally misunderstand depression versus, we have the term manic depressive, right? Are those different? In other words, and is sort of clinical depression, or, we're not going to diagnose Lena Hidalgo here, but is that temporary? Is it long term, and then treatments? What are treatments? Is it medical, or is it just like Simone Biles, for example? Just she needed time off because of the incredible pressure I'm sure Simone Biles suffers from being a world-class athlete, right? And a lot of athletes suffer from that. So what's the difference between just depression? Is it transitory? Is it permanent? Is it long-lasting? Is it short-lived? And then what's the difference between that and manic depressive people?
Sure. Yeah. So depression can look different for everybody. And I think that is one of the reasons why it's difficult to diagnose, or sometimes it even goes misdiagnosed, because what depression may look like for one person, which could be short term, maybe a couple of months, maybe a single episode, may look very different for another person that has long-term depression or lifelong depression. And maybe they go through serious periods of depression. When we usually talk about manic episodes and also depression, we're typically referring to bipolar disorder, which is a series of hypomanic or manic episodes and depression, and they happen back to back. Whereas when we're talking about clinical depression, we're typically referring to major depressive disorder, and those are just an extended period of time of depressive symptoms. As far as treatment goes, it really has to be catered to each client specifically. So for some clients, you're right. They can just say, you know what? I need to take some time. I need to be out of the spotlight for a little bit. I need to do a little bit of self-care. For others, like Judge Lena Hidalgo, it may require inpatient treatment where she will be overseen by a medical staff day in, day out, all day, all night for an extended period of time. So it really just comes back to the severity of the case. And typically we decide what the severity is based on an evaluation.
Dr. Vauda, Let's explain, this kind of condition in the case of Judge Lina Hidalgo versus a regular person. She is on the spot all the time. This is apparently not the first time that happened. She has no political career. She just started in this, so she has a lot of pressure. And managing a county like Harris County is not an easy thing. So apparently, I mean, it was not easy for her to handle all of those things. So let's talk about the difference between a clinical depression of a regular person that and a person like Lina Hidalgo.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned some really important points. In her position, she is very much under the spotlight. Every action, every behavior is looked at under a microscope. And that can certainly add a lot of extra pressure, a lot of stress, living up to the expectations of the community, having to respond to various different community events and issues. I mean, all of that stress can absolutely increase the symptoms of depression. Sometimes people may be more susceptible to depression as well from a genetic level or hormonal level, but they never have the feelings of depression until you add the stressor. And so this may be what has happened here, although it's kind of hard to tell because we don't really have a good, thorough understanding of what symptoms she was experiencing. We just know that she's been diagnosed with clinical depression.
There is a difference, I'm assuming, because, you know, I've gone through periods of depression. I lose a race for office, I'm depressed for a week. But and frankly, there's been periods in my life where I've gone through very stressful situations, and I have visited a psychologist. Right? I mean, we just someone you talk to, whether it's a social worker, or a priest, or psychologist, or a family counselor, or whatnot. I'm just saying that because there's a difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. Correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And can you define, in other words, when do you seek the help of a psychologist and generally, and when would you seek the assistance of a psychiatrist?
So that's a great question. It really depends on your level of care. And level of care means how severe the situation is and how intense the symptoms are. So you're right. Someone that has depression and is working through it, but it's relatively well managed, may see someone that is a licensed professional counselor or a psychologist. Whereas if the situation calls for any type of medical intervention where medication may be used to supplement the treatment, then that's when you'll loop in the care of a psychiatrist. So to put it easily, a psychiatrist can do a lot of the counseling as well. However, we typically loop them in when we're also looking for medication management. And if the symptoms are less severe, then we can enlist the help of a licensed professional counselor or a psychologist.
Well, now I want to bring Dr. Daniel Perez Liston from the University of Houston, and we will come back to you, Dr. Vauda. But I want to bring him to help us to understand because we don't know if it's going to take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 4 months, 6 months. God knows. Because this is not the first time that happens to her. And clearly, she is not capable to handle all this kind of pressure that she's going through. So, what will be the impact having this current situation of her with the county and political, economical, knowing that we're coming to we're having elections in November, and then next year we're having presidential elections and other elections in town, not only in the Harris County but in the city. So give us a spectrum of that.
Yeah, well, first of all, Andrea and Orlando, thank you very much for having me on the show. And I want to say that, the views that I expressed today are my own. They're not the views expressed by the University of Houston downtown. But thank you very much for having me. And I want to echo what Dr. Vauda said today, that, she's under enormous pressure. Anyone in this position is under enormous pressure and is susceptible to falling into these kind of like mental health, difficulties or depressions. And let's also remember that, I think she's the first woman, right, to be elected county judge. And if I'm not mistaken, I think she's the youngest person to ever be elected. So I think she's also she also has this big role to fill. So she might have like this extra pressure that maybe somebody else doesn't have. So I think these might be like psychological factors or pressures that somebody else might not have. I guess from a political perspective, I think this is definitely not like a good thing to have, right? Not a good situation to have. I think it's usually our politicians, what we expect, our politicians to be invincible. We expect our politicians to be healthy all the time. We expect them to be healthy all the time. We expect them, not to get sick, to be, basically, workhorses, machines that are just like perfect. But that's an expectation I think that the public has wrong. I think politicians and people like Judge Hidalgo are basically human, and I think this is something that is proven today, right? That she can get sick just like everyone else. She can have mental health issues just like everyone else, and I think it's important for her to step up and show the public that she's just like everyone else, and she can get sick just like everyone else, and she needs to address this issue, in a private manner. So I applaud her for doing that. Um, in the past, I think historically, a lot of politicians have dealt with this, privately, and they've hid this stuff, right, from the public, and they have taken like extraordinary measures from hiding this from the public, right? And I think, politically, this, sometimes this is, I wouldn't say advantageous, but it gives this like aura of invincibility. This politician is perfect. He's invincible. But I think hopefully we can live in a new era where the politician is more honest and more transparent, and they show that they're just like everyone else and they can get sick, and hopefully she can overcome this. And just like the professor explained, and like you guys mentioned, we frankly, I think, I'm a finance professor and I deal with probabilities and with risks and all these things. We do a lot of analysis of statistics and probability. So from a finance perspective, I do a lot of these analyses that have to do with risks. And I think the risk analysis that people are looking at is, what's the probability of her of recovering, right? From this illness, and I think that's something that we just don't know, right? We just can't know how soon she's going to recover. If it's going to take, like you mentioned, Andrea, if it's going to take a month, if it's going to take 2 months, 3 months, like we just can't know. I think it's just something that's uncertain. So how is it going to affect her politically? It's going to depend on the probability of her recovering and how long it's going to take for her to recover. And I think it's just something that it's unknown at this point. I don't think anybody in the world, or any Democrat or Republican, can tell you how quickly she's going to recover, how severe the depression is, that kind of stuff, because we just don't know. We don't have that information. And we don't have that information because in this country, that information is actually private, right? It's private, and she can't know what the progression of her illness is going to be, right? That's something that also no one can foresee. Now, politically speaking, I think she would have preferred not to be sick, right? I think we can all agree on that. Um, Economically speaking, I think I agree with Orlando in terms of, I think that the county is going to continue to be run as it was before, right? They're just going to be missing that head of communication. The county judge is the person that's responsible of communicating, all of their initiatives, all of their decisions. That's the person that's responsible to communicate to the public, what everything that the county is doing, and they're going to be missing that person. In terms of an emergency situation, I think in the statement that the county put out, I think she is capable of making like an emergency decision. So I think she is going to be accessible in case of an emergency. Like as far in terms of the political situation, right now we're coming up to hurricane season, and we haven't had like a hurricane right now, but we're coming into hurricane season, and if there is like a serious hurricane, God forbid there is a serious hurricane, we're going to need someone that you know you know provides their leadership or their face to the public and shows their face to the public. So politically speaking, that might be a challenge for her leadership if she's not there. If there's like a serious situation, God forbid there is like a serious hurricane in the Houston area.
Well, let me jump in. I mean, because I'm fascinated by the politics of all this, and as you both may know, and if you don't, I'm certainly happy to share. Having 25 years experience in politics, I tell people all the time, especially young people like Judge Hidalgo, that politics is a full contact sport. And you not only are you under a microscope, constantly have the press analyzing and questioning you, but there are also, Professor Liston says, she can still make emergency decisions, sure. But the question is, how's the public going to feel when she's making emergency decisions for the third largest county in the United States from an out of state psychological clinic or
Yeah.
psychiatric clinic? I don't know that the voters are going to be real happy with that. So there is political risk. Number two, speaking of tremendous pressure, let's not forget that several of her administrative staff have been indicted in the Harris County District Courts
That's another
under
thing.
very severe criminal accusations. And there's still an investigation going on. And so I think, and we can't dismiss this, is that some of those that have been indicted may be talking. You know how the prosecutors work? They'll get people to flip
Of course.
and say, well, it wasn't my idea, it was her idea.
Yeah.
And so one has to begin to wonder if the criminal investigation that's currently underway hasn't basically turned up the heat. The question is, whether District Attorney Kim Ogg will go there and come after the sitting Democrat county judge. So there's a lot of political intrigue. So, if it weren't because she's a rookie, she youngest to be elected, had no political experience, and jumped into the kitchen basically as the head chef of a party that you got 1,500 guests, you have to perform now. And she's under a lot of pressure. So, but there is underlying political pressure, Professor, I think you would agree with, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of political pressure, and I was looking at her age, before we came on the show, and she is a little bit older now. I think she was 26 when she was elected, and now I think she's 32, I believe. So she's getting a little bit older and probably a little bit more experienced, but still very young. Still very young for this position. A lot of pressure, so it's understandable. I think another popular figure that we saw nationwide go through this was John Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania, and I think he went through this situation, already recovered from this I think they call it situational depression versus clinical depression, and he made it through, but you don't know, and there's a lot of risk and a lot of a lot of political pressure, and I think she probably wishes that she wasn't in this situation, but at the same time, we're human. And I just want to give you one story. I was talking to someone yesterday that voted for Judge Hidalgo, but is currently not satisfied with Judge Hidalgo's performance. Right, so she voted for her, but is not satisfied with her performance. And I mentioned, her situation, and she's actually happy that she took the initiative and put this out there, and she got admitted and is getting treated for her depression. So they're sympathetic to the idea that she's getting treated for her illness. So you're going to have people
I don't.
on both
Yeah,
sides.
I don't. Look, I don't disagree with her. I didn't vote for her. She's not of my party, but I'm. You have to have compassion. I mean, if somebody's going through a mental issue, you don't want to wish that on anybody. And so,
No. Regardless,
I mean, just from a
it's not
humanity
exactly. It's not
perspective,
about a party. It's not about
you
nothing like
wish
that.
as a human being, not as the county judge or a Democrat,
Correct.
you want to wish her the very best. But she
Yeah.
does have a job.
Absolutely.
Then she
And
does have to lead the third largest county in the nation. And but Professor, you made an interesting point that I want to ask our guest, Professor Dr. Vanda.
Dr. Vaura.
What is the difference between clinical depression and situational depression he just mentioned? Because I don't know that difference.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of terms that are used to kind of define and specify major depressive disorder. So typically, just like as it sounds, situational depression is typically brought on by a particular situation. Given that, and I think that Judge Hidalgo had mentioned this in her letter, that she recently found out about her depression or was recently diagnosed. And so that could mean a lot of different things. It could mean that maybe she had symptoms that were present for a long period of time and she never knew what it was, or it was unexplained. Or maybe there are recent situations right now that are perpetuating and the stress, or there's just added stress right now, and so maybe there is a history of depression that is clinical, or maybe it was brought on by the specific situation.
Hmm.
So I want to
And
ask her
and
now, Orlando and Dr. Perez Liston, the constituents, the taxpayers, they can do something about it.
Well, I knew that was coming.
Uh huh.
The U.S. Statutes, the Constitution actually provides for removal of office of elected officials for various reasons. Incapacitation, incompetence, conspiracy against the United States, whatever. And more, we're seeing that through the impeachment process, which I'm going to give you an opinion now. It's become very political, right? Clinton gets impeached, Trump gets impeached, now they want to impeach Biden. It's become a joke in Washington. But there are provisions in federal statutes and the Constitution for removal of folks who are elected. So I am not an attorney. We probably ought to invite an attorney, but I'm assuming that the Texas Election Code or some statute in the state of Texas has a provision to remove someone from office that is incapacitated, incompetent, or has a serious violation of the criminal code. But I'm not an attorney, so that's up for discussion. By the way, you can call in the program. I don't have my glasses on, but it's 281. What's the number?
281 833 3333.
So
So
if
it's
somebody wants to participate, yeah,
281
if some
281 833.
3333.
Call in if you're an attorney and have an opinion. We'll put you on the air and like to hear about it. But I think both professors are not political scientists, so probably haven't really looked at the Texas election code or the Constitution sufficient enough to be. And I'm in politics and I can't comment, but I do know there are provisions for removal. Either one of you can comment if you'd like.
yeah, I mean, to me, like you said, Orlando. I mean, I'm not a political scientist, and but I think it makes sense. I think the way to state this is that when you're elected to office, it's a privilege to serve in office, right? It's not a right. Like, it's not your right to be in office. It's a privilege to serve the people of Texas, the people of the United States, whichever office you're elected to. And if for whatever reason, you can't serve in that office, whether it's, some kind of health reason or some kind of like other type of reason, then I think, the people of that state or that entity that you represent should have some kind of of ability to remove you from that office. I think the one that you're talking about would probably deal with like some kind of health issue. So, for example, just to give like an example, let's say let's say you're, I don't know, some kind of, senator, right? You're kind of senator and you're involved in a horrific car crash, right? And all of a sudden, your brain can't function anymore, right? For whatever reason, your brain can't function and you're a senator, right? And you can't make any decisions whatsoever. The people should have the ability to remove you from office, right? I think that's kind of what you're referring to. Now, I'm not a lawyer, right? But I mean, I think people should have that ability to remove you from office and then, hold like some kind of special election
Yeah,
or
we're
something.
getting into areas that we really need an attorney, but at least at the federal level, I think, for example, with the President of the United States, it would have to be someone in government, that gets the ball rolling. I don't think the average citizen can petition a court to
Yeah.
remove an elected official. I remember I can't remember the congresswoman's name. Remember, was shot in the head and had brain injuries for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
In
She
Arizona,
was married. I'm sorry.
I believe, right? I
Yeah, in
think
In
Arizona.
Arizona,
Arizona.
married
Yeah.
to an astronaut,
Yeah.
Yeah.
was incapacitated for a long, long time, but was never removed from office because we have a lot of senators. Senator Feinstein, for example, has been ill for quite some time. You have members of Congress, both the Senate and the House, that have cancer treatment that are undergoing for 90 days. They're not. So people aren't removed generally for health reasons. It has to be for incompetence, incapacitation, or selling secrets of the United States for foreign countries for financial gain. Wink,
Yeah.
wink. I don't know what the Texas code says. So again, if there's an attorney that is watching, please call in and tell us what you think is the case.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
And I
Uh,
think, go ahead,
yeah,
Doctor.
yeah, go ahead.
I think the other side of this is while we're talking about this, we're typically referring to medical issues. And I think it gets a little more ambiguous when we talk about mental health issues because the other side of the conversation is okay, well, someone came out and said that they had a mental health issue. We are praising them and their bravery for saying this and getting treatment and doing the right thing. But then if they are deemed incompetent or incapacitated, well, then the question is, so are there consequences now for saying, hey, I have a mental health issue and I'm getting treatment? So I think we get into a really sticky situation
Yeah.
and navigating that's going to be really
No
interesting.
question. That's an excellent observation, and I can tell you in politics, it's tough. I mean, it's tough. This is not Hollywood. This is you're not a Hollywood actor, which people universally love. Obviously, if you look at elections, and especially in Harris County, they're so close. Half the people didn't vote for Lena Hidalgo, half did. So it's now, again, now we're getting into the politics of it. This, even if she comes back, an opponent in 3.5 years could say, look, she's been absent 70% of the time in some kind of, seeking mental health. And the other half of the population says, well, good for her. She's doing her best and she's getting treatment. So it's a precarious situation. But again, I can just say from a compassionate, humanitarian position, it's an illness. She admits it. She's getting treatment. And I think everybody should just wish her the best and hope she comes back soon. But if the public's at risk, then it becomes a political issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
want to touch the topic that, Dr. Perez Liston says something very important, that this is not something new. This is something that has been happening forever.
You mean
But
depression?
yeah,
I heard the other day a statistic, and maybe you can correct me, but 1 in 5 people suffer from depression.
correct. And I think Dr. Vauda can give us better statistics, and we're having these, if you have a crisis, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, it's a 1-800-273-8255 if you're suffering from this. But I wanted you to give us a perspective of statistics about depression, mental health issues that now is not that didn't exist before, but that now people are talking about, not only on the media, but now in social media. So people are more, more open about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have definitely in the last several years seen a rise in all different types of mental health issues, not just depression, also anxiety. There's two things that may be contributing to that. One is, like you said, we're just way more aware now than we ever were about mental health issues. Some people are coming forward and are saying, you know what, I've had these symptoms my whole life, or I've been experiencing this for so many years. And for the first time, I have a label for it. It's depression or it's anxiety. And with the spread of information, it's so fast now. It's like fire. So people are learning a lot more than they ever have learned before through social media. And I think the other side of that is that we've culturally and as a community and as a nation have gone through something pretty significant in the last couple of years with COVID-19. And it's really changed the social and the economic landscape of our nation, of our state, our county. And people are having to learn to cope in ways that they've never coped before, right? There's been a lot more social isolation than there's ever been before. People are valuing different parts of their life that they haven't always valued, like their social relationships, family relationships.
Yeah, but
And so,
hey, let me pause you real quick. Explain that to
sure.
me because I haven't quite seen my way clear to this issue. In life, you go through periods of turbulence, right? It's like an airplane. You go from here to New York. You hope for a smooth ride, but you know you're going to hit some turbulence, right? Life is the same way. You're going to have death in your family. You're going to have divorce in your family. You're going to have financial crises in your family. Some of us lose our homes. Some of us file bankruptcy. Life isn't smooth. So yes, we had a pandemic and we were isolated for some time, but we're back at it. And so I don't understand how it's like.
Well,
Are
not
you,
not everybody deal with
No, I
situations the
understand, but
same
there's
way.
so much of the discourse is about, well, we're depressed because of the pandemic.
Well,
I'm
I
not
wouldn't
getting
say
that.
are depressed collectively because of the pandemic, but I think the situation and the changes because of the pandemic. For example, social isolation. So if you look at kids that were in high school, right, the final years of their high school are now transitioning into college and are struggling in college because they missed out on an educational component or a social component in some very prime years of their life, right, in their educational growth. Same with elementary kids, right? We always talk about the COVID babies. Those kids missed out on an opportunity for social emotional learning and development. And that may now translate to social issues. It may translate to anxiety. So we don't know yet because it's still very soon after, but we're starting to
Hmm.
see new trends that we haven't ever seen before.
Another thing that I want to mention, Dr. Vauda, that I personally suffered was something called long COVID. And Dr. Vauda might be more familiar with this term. Is basically you get COVID and then you start having like all these like side effects or basically like these lingering symptoms from COVID. And a lot of people, and I personally didn't suffer too much from this, but a lot of people have like mental health issues from actually getting COVID, right? And that might be a contributing factor to like mental health issues. I personally didn't have like mental health issues, but people that actually have long COVID actually can develop mental health issues like anxiety and depression and so on.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So,
And I
um,
mean, COVID, long COVID, and other medical conditions as well, right? You can have a medical condition like cancer, and because of the medical condition and how long it's persisted, that can absolutely be an added stressor on your mind and your body, which can
yeah.
result in depression for some people, right? Some people's capacity to handle stressors is just way different than others, and so it really just depends on each unique person.
Absolutely, everybody handle things
Well,
different, and some
yeah.
people are stronger than other. And also, not only with the pandemic, but also with the technology and the social media, we've been seeing more people with this kind of depression and mental health issues because of the pressure of the society and the fashion and the perfect body, the perfect face, and
Well, but We had a guest some time ago, or I don't remember. No, it was a program. It was a documentary I watched. I don't know if you've ever seen a documentary called The Great Hack, um, but uh, but there was a comment made there that initially social media platforms like Facebook, like Twitter, any of them, Instagram, all of the early ones like MySpace, were to bring the world together, right, on social platforms so that I could visit with people in China and interchange culturally and visit with my friends in Russia. And, it would bring the world closer together. In fact, I think, and I've heard, it's really created this sort of isolated society where depression and isolation come in because let's just say I go on Daniel Perez's Liston's Facebook page, and he's got a great body. He's been working out. He's rock solid.
He's been all over Europe
He's been all over
during the
Europe.
summer.
He's on a yacht.
And we're here.
And then I'm thinking to myself, wow, man, that dude's got it going on. He's got a great life. Look at me. I'm losing my hair. I'm old. I'm divorced. I lost my election.
Well,
I
I'm
get
already
depressed.
depressed because he went to Europe and I didn't.
So the point is that possible? I mean, could it be that we're spending so much time looking at other people's great, lifestyle of the rich and famous, and we're going, geez, I'm just a old chump.
But well,
I
yeah,
mean,
you are.
Is that possible? Is that possible? See,
Oh, absolutely. And you have to think people are not going to post their low moments on social media. They're not going to post
Exactly.
if you take a picture and there was 10 other pictures you took to get the perfect one, we're not posting the imperfect one. We're posting the one that looks nice with the filter and the perfect caption.
Wait, you mean people filter their photos?
Well, yeah, hello.
I hate to break it to you.
Yeah.
A great example of this, and I just learned about this. Bella Hadid, the famous model, Bella Hadid, she just posted something on Instagram that she's been dealing with like Lyme disease and some kind of like health issue, and she posted those low moment photos, right, where she was getting like blood infusions and stuff like that. So, you would see Bella Hadid posting her greatest pictures, right, modeling and everything.
She's
But you wouldn't
gorgeous.
see, yeah, but you wouldn't see the other pictures where she was getting the blood infusions. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, politicians, even John F. Kennedy suffered from terrible back problems, right? Where he had to take like pain medication, everything. And people really didn't know this, right?
Yeah.
So I think, we expect our politicians to be invincible when they're really not. They're human, just like everyone else.
Mark just flashed his whiteboard.
Our producer, Mark, our producer.
And he says FOMO.
FOMO.
FOMO. I never heard of that, but he says it's fear of missing out. Is that a real fear there?
Yeah.
You missing out if you're not, socially acceptable on social media?
Yeah, for sure.
But in the other side, I
But
mean,
no,
it's-
I want to hear Dr. Vanda tell us. Is
Yeah,
that a real
absolutely.
concern?
I think that FOMO is actually a very, very popular trend acronym for quite a while.
Really?
I think we've moved away from
I'm
FOMO.
up to speed, aren't I?
I don't know.
But
I don't know, but
Let me hear her answer.
I think that there's just naturally, it's inside of us that when we see the world around us, all of our friends, all of our family enjoying or moving forward in life or having these different experiences, we kind of put ourselves in that context and say, hey, what about me? What if my life could look like that too? Or what am I missing out on? And the thing about social media is you're looking at so many pictures back to back to back that your mind doesn't even really get an opportunity to stop and settle and process the thought. So it's just building on these little thoughts of, well, what about me? Well, what about me? Well, what about me? I wish I could have that. And then the next thing you know, you're comparing yourself to all these other people and feeling like there's something that is not fulfilling or meaningful about your own life.
Well, I mean, that just begs the question because I go to restaurants, Andrea, and the whole family of 6 are sitting there like this.
oh yeah, they don't talk.
They're sitting there, they're not talking, and so, I mean, do you recommend? I know some restaurants were like banning people. They made them put their phones in a
In
basket.
California,
Yeah,
they
that
do
was
that.
absolutely a good
Not
concept.
here.
But
Yeah.
Do you recommend parents limit the time that children spend on social media platforms?
Absolutely. I think it's really important to not only talk about limitations, but also monitoring, actively monitoring, because it's important for parents to know what it is that their children are engaging with online. What type of content are they interested in? And actually, one of the best, most helpful predictors of mental wellness is social engagement and interaction. So if we are decreasing that by being on social media or looking at our phone and not having conversations and engaging with one another, then we're actually doing something that may be very harmful for our mental health. So I think that it's really important to pull away from the social media every now and then and say, hey, wait a second, let me engage with the world around me. Let me engage with the people around me and have conversations with them. And I think that goes back to, one of the things that I think are really important is we need to teach people how to have conversations again with one another. I think that used to be very innate, but it seems like we struggle with that social piece now.
Well, I'm going to give a plug again to PBS because they have a great program called Nature that I watch all the time, Andrea. And the other day they were talking about how our DNA is not too far removed from, gorillas, for example. But you look at gorillas and primates, they're social animals. Most animals run in herds. They're social. We are designed to be social. And when you're sitting in the basement of your house on your laptop or desktop or your phone 18 hours a day, 2 hours to shower, eat, I mean, you have no social interaction.
No.
That's a problem, right, guys?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's an epidemic of loneliness in this country,
Yeah.
and it's been going on for years. And I think it's getting worse, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the data in front of me, but it's been getting worse over time. And I think that could be a contributing factor to all these like mental health issues as well. But it's getting worse, and it also could go to the issue of how we want to live as a society. Because if one there has to be like a work life balance as well, right? It goes to these like deep questions of work life balance and stuff like that. But definitely there's an epidemic of loneliness, and people need to really value their friendships, their families, all these like social activities, because we're social beings, and people that interact with other people are usually like happier, healthier people.
And back to the original topic, with the politicians, what is going on right now with Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo. The politicians before, they were suffering from depression, and they were getting attacked by the media and people around. But now it's not only the media, it's also the social media. As soon as they post something, you start seeing 1,000 of comments, and it's like majority is attacking the person. So imagine they're sitting and reading all of these things. It gets to them. So it is like the traditional media, social media, the people around. So it's a lot of pressure if you're not strong enough, not only for the position, but also to handle this.
I was driving from Green Bay, Wisconsin to Houston, and there were signs on the side of this road that said, buckle up, phone down. So, you know what? Don't read it. Put the phone down. I mean, it's in the old days. I mean, I agree. I remember when I started in politics, this is how old I am. It's probably before either one of you were born. In 1992, I started my political career, and there was a political writer for the Houston Chronicle named Alan Bernstein, great guy. And if he'd write something that wasn't flattering about me, I was like, I mean, it was in my mind all day. It bothered me, right?
Yeah.
And eventually I'd blow it off. But it was just one newspaper. Imagine now you go on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and everybody's trashing you. God, you talk about depression.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, the name of the person that wrote that piece about you.
Yeah.
Now we have people hiding behind a screen or a phone, and they don't have to reveal their identity. So imagine how ruthless people can be on the other end.
Absolutely. Well, call to action. Let's start with Dr. Vanda, and then we go to Danielle Perez Liston.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think that when I think about mental health and mental wellness, there's really three things that I want the community to keep in mind. One, we are collectively starting to recognize that mental health is very important and it is an issue. So I would encourage everyone to monitor yourselves. If you notice that you're starting to feel a little nervous or anxious or sad, definitely keep checking in with yourself and notice that feeling and monitor it. I think we have the tendency to kind of brush it aside and continue to move on with our life because we have long laundry lists of things to do, but we really need to stop and attend to what's going on in our mind and in our body. And the second piece is social interactions and social engagement. Engaging with others, having good, meaningful connections with others can be a buffer between ourselves and mental illness. So if there is an opportunity for you to step out of your home or step out of the basement and connect with someone, go out, have a coffee, even just go outside and just spend a couple minutes under the sun. Get out there and allow yourself to engage with the world around you and with other people. And finally, self care. I know that this is a very trendy word right now, but we have a responsibility to take care of ourselves because we, as a community, we all rely on each other and we have a responsibility to one another. And I think it's important for us to engage in self care. Specifically in this case, I think that we've talked about how Judge Hidalgo is so, under the microscope. She spends a lot of time working. She is the front end or the voice for a lot of communication. And so, especially if you play big, important roles, it's even more important that you're engaging in self care because it's easy for self care to go out the door when you've got a lot of business that needs to be done. So, those are really the three things that I would want people to kind of keep in the back of their mind. And I think this is an unfortunate situation, but I like the direction that we are going in as a community about recognizing that, hey, yeah, mental health is a really big deal and we need to talk about it.
Absolutely. Daniel?
And well, I want to mention that there's a lot of invisible illnesses, and I think society needs to be aware of these invisible illnesses. A lot of people are walking around and they look like they're normal, but they're not normal. So we need to keep in mind of these people, and we need to recognize these people. We don't know what they're going through, so we just need to have empathy for these people. So I guess what I want to say is I want people to have some empathy for these people that have invisible illnesses. So and not just personal empathy, but I think there's also a lot of missing political empathy in society today. I think whether someone is a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat, there needs to be a lot of empathy for these people. These people are not robots; they're human beings. They get sick, they suffer. So I think people need to have empathy nowadays. We're missing a lot of empathy in society, whether it's for politicians, for businessmen, for just regular folks. We need a lot of empathy, and we need to just keep that in mind in society.
Well, and I agree with that. I think there's a thirst in America for some kind of civility. It's unfortunately, it's the leaders, and I don't know who's exacerbated the situation, whether it's social media, because everybody's a reporter, everybody has an opinion now, and everybody wants to air that on social media. But I think the leadership has a responsibility to tone it down, get back to civility. I think America has a thirst for that, and I'm glad you mentioned that. And yes, awareness is important. I want to tell you folks that this mental health issue is not a new issue. I was elected to Harris County as county treasurer many, many, many years ago when Judge Emmett was serving. Judge Emmett was a big advocate for mental health because he divulged publicly that he had a family member that had suffered from mental illness. And he also lamented the fact of very little psychiatric mental health care in Harris County, which leads me to an intro that Harris Health is about to issue a $2.5 billion bond issue. And part of that bond issue is to beef up mental health care in Harris County, which is desperately needed. I mean, we all understand that the county jail is not the place to treat folks that are suffering from mental illness. And unfortunately, too often, our police are not adequately trained, and so they handcuff people and drag them off to the county jail. That's not where they belong. And so we're bearing the cost as taxpayers. And so we're going to have the CEO of Harris Health hopefully on the program. Andrea's going to reach out to Dr. Porsa, and he's going to
I
talk
already did,
about
yeah.
that.
We're coordinating dates.
And it's a very important bond issue, but again, it's not the issue of mental health is not being highlighted now because of just Lena Hidalgo. Judge Ed Emmett used to talk about it quite a bit. So we want to thank Professor Vanda and Professor Liston, the University of Houston downtown, and the University of St. Thomas for making you folks available. I know that your comments and opinions are strictly yours and not the university's, but we value your professionalism, your insights, and your time. So we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for talking about this very important issue.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Orlando.
Thank you. Well,
Bueno, ya
it was
acabamos otro programa. Dama en parece una naranja.
una calabaza. Also, I want to say something about Leadership Latino, that it was
Go ahead.
this past weekend. It was Friday and Saturday, and it was a total successful class.
There's our class.
Yeah, and it was the largest class so far since we started the program.
Not only that, but let me make an observation. If you look at those if you put that photo back up, if you look at that photo, when we started Leadership Latino, which was training young Hispanic leaders to be the future conservative leaders of the state of Texas, right? That was our vision. And we used to get 4, 5, 6 Hispanics participate.
Yeah.
Look at that crowd now. We had a Nigerian immigrant, which I'm proud to say is very involved in the community. We had Mexican Americans, we had Venezuelans, we
Indian.
had women, we had Asians. I mean, we had people from Fort Bend County. It has really blossomed into something that we had no idea when we started this, how popular it would become. And as
I
Andrea
know.
said, it was our largest class. We're proud of our students. We have a wall. It's the Hall of Fame on our Facebook. I mean, not Facebook, on our website, of all the folks we've endorsed or have gone through Leadership Latino that have been success. All of our graduates are successful. first of all.
Absolutely.
All of our graduates are successful. But we highlight the ones that have been elected. So go to our Facebook page, check out our Hall of Fame page, and if you want to get started in politics, which, it's a full contact sport, let me tell you, it's not for the weak. But if you want to lead in your community, if you have ideas about the direction of Harris County, the city of Houston, the school district, the state of Texas, or America, lead. Put your name on the ballot, come debate, come talk about ideas, and this makes the country great. So we congratulate all of our graduates who received certificates from TLC.
I know.
All of our, we have these things on Saturday, and I've got to thank our faculty, right? Everybody that took time.
Yeah, everybody
from
took
Saturday,
time from
Andrea
Yeah.
to,
My son.
your
he
son
did the book.
and Annette, who does
Everybody put their time.
compliance, and Mr. Dumay, and these are volunteers. They're
There's
not
a
getting
volunteer, and also we give this class for free. So people are coming to take the class. They
paid. Well,
don't
let
pay.
me say something.
They don't pay anything.
Our class is not free. It's at no cost to the
At
students.
no cost to the student.
But we
Because
can do
us,
that
yeah.
by the
But
generosity of Texans that give us substantial
But they're investing their
contributions.
time also
Yes, they
to
are.
learn, and we are investing our time to teach them. So that's I think it's a win-win situation that we're doing this kind of class that I don't think it exists before. And people, imagine you 25 years ago, you learn on your own how to become run for office, politician, and all of these things. Now, at least, as a tool, as resources that we're providing to people.
All right. Well, thank you for another wonderful program. Thank you to our professors from the University of Houston downtown and the University of St. Thomas. We thank you for tuning in. We always appreciate your comments. And certainly if you want to keep us on the air and help Texas maintain good conservative leadership, make a donation, go to our webpage, TexasLatinoConservatives.com, hit the donate button. It can be $5, $50, $500, or $50,000. We'll take anything.
Nos vemos el próximo miércoles.
Hasta luego.
Chao, chao.